If I was to give a proper introduction of the person, I would say, oh, he's like this, and he has these attributes and such. But I presume that you, the audience, know something about him to start.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go to what Tolkien says in one of his letters, and I'll just read it. And then eventually we'll get to some of the attributes that you may know of him, and some that you may not know of him. I was rereading this, that part of the Fellowship a couple days ago in preparation for this, and I was blown away by things that I was learning about him that I did not know. But, and I'll skip around in this a little bit. This is from a letter that Tolkien wrote. It's a very long letter that he wrote to somebody, and I'm just not going to flip back enough pages to find out who. Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative. I suppose he has some importance as a comment. And he represents something that I feel important, though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely. I would not, however, have left him in if he did not have some function. I might put it this way. The story is cast in terms of a good side and a bad side, beauty against ruthless ugliness, tyranny against kingship, moderated freedom with consent against compulsion that has long lost any objective save mere power, and so on. But both sides, in some degree, conservative or destructive, want a measure of control. But if you have, as it were, taken a vow of poverty, renounced control, and take your delight in things for themselves without reference to yourself, then the question of the rights and wrongs of power and control might become utterly meaningless to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the means of power quite valueless. It is a natural pacifist view, which always arises in the mind when there is a war. But the view of Rivendell seems to be that it is an excellent thing to have represented, but that there are in fact things with which it cannot cope, and upon which its existence nonetheless depends. Ultimately, only the victory of the West will allow Bombadil to continue, or even to survive. Nothing would be left for him in the world of Sauron.
Mm.
So that is a deep backstory to him. He is a pacifist. He is
not worth philosophizing about my foot. Tolkien just philosophized about Tom Bombadil when he said he wasn't going to do that.
Well, he tried. He didn't spend too much more time on it. And no, he is not God. There's some people that think he might be because Goldberry described him as he is, but no, he's not God. He is not Eru Iluvatar.
Yeah,
but
no, she's just saying that in the sense of, oh, he's just there.
Yeah. So what is he then? He is the spirit of pacifism. He is the spirit of a forest. And not just of the forest, but of a particular area of land, a particular time and place. Why? We don't know. Tolkien doesn't know, and so we're not going to think about that too much farther. But in his domain, we can say that he is a true master of it. Even if he is not concerned with the things of the outside world, if he is not concerned with that type of power and control, he still has an immense amount of power. The way we're introduced to him is he's singing. And I think it's evident or at least evident to Tolkien nerds, potentially, that the songs that he's singing are songs of power. Or that he at least has that ability. I mean, he clearly demonstrates it when he rescues the hobbits from the Barrow-wight. Because in beautiful Tolkien-esque fashion, he rescues them with a song. He rescues them from Old Man Willow with a song. But there also, I imagine, might be some power in his songs to Goldberry. And just his simple tunes of nonsense, as the hobbits call them, when he's just faffing about and getting water lilies for his lady. There's a real beauty to that, and a real, again, power that is easily understated until its effects become very apparent to you. And in his own words, or Goldberry's words, I forget, or both, he's never been caught. He is the master. He is arguably immortal, although he could be killed. Tolkien seems to think that it's possible he could be killed. But no, he's never been caught. He is master.
Well, the elves are kind of the same way.
Nah,
they're immortal until they die.
Okay, fair. But Tom, at least, might be immortal, but in that sense that he really knows his place and knows it well. How much of it just because of his own nature, or how much of it because of his own choices, I don't know.
I had this thought today. Tom Bombadil is kind of the definition of the most right way of being the big fish in the small pond. But I think the way that you put it is actually more poetic and more beautiful. Like his actual domain, his domain of power is limited and is very small. But within it, he has nearly limitless power. I don't know that Bombadil would actually be much good outside of the forest, or any past the Barrow Downs, or any way past Bree.
Yeah, I think there's this moment in it's either in Cirith Ungol, or it's in the Tower of Cirith Ungol, or it's somewhere in Mordor, where either Frodo or Sam might sing that tune that he teaches the hobbits to sing, which rescues them from the Barrow Downs, or they think it. I can't remember. But for one, there's no way he can hear it. And for two, even if he could hear it and just manifest himself into that place, I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense that he would have the same power there.
Yeah, he has no power. He has no authority over the place of Cirith Ungol.
Yeah.
Where his power is the greatest is in the Old Forest. This is... There are types of characters, we see them very often in various forms of fantasy, where your power is tied to a specific place, and the farther you get from that place, the weaker your power becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Tom Bombadil is a character very much like that. His power is at its greatest in the Old Forest, at its strongest. And it starts to weaken when you get to the Barrow Downs, because you're outside of the Old Forest, you're outside of the direct perimeter of the Old Forest. My evidence for this is that in the Old Forest, when Merry and Pippin have been trapped by Old Man Willow, who is apparently rather cranky, Frodo and Sam yell for help, and Tom Bombadil comes along. And he just sort of, well, for one thing, he snaps a branch off of Old Man Willow and beats him with it, and says, "Let them go, you've had your snack." So he needs no Song of Power for Old Man Willow to obey. At any time, in any way when he uses it, if it does anything, it just lets them know that he's there. It lets the trees know that he's there. And maybe because he sings it so often, that's what solidifies his power in the forest. But in the Barrow Downs, Frodo has to sing the song to get Tom Bombadil's attention, which there's no way that any mortal ear could hear somebody singing from inside a barrow.
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded by stone. Your sound's not getting out of there. So clearly the song is a song of power and has some summoning capabilities. But then it takes a song of power from Tom Bombadil to cast out the Barrow Wight, or to cause it to flee, or to cause it to stop, and to open the barrow. So basically, because he has to do more, his intrinsic power is slightly weakened, because he's farther away from the Old Forest.
Yeah, I think it's a decent theory. So, yeah,
it's just a theory, and that's just my observation. But it more sort of builds off of what you had said.
Mm-hmm. I have a slightly different theory, which is based on the fact that he does actually sing to Old Man Willow to let them go. And because of where precisely he leaves the four hobbits at the very end of his encounter with them, it's on the road to Bree, and at some point he's just like, nope, this is the border of my land, I'm done, I'm heading back.
Oh, so the Barrow Downs are actually within his land.
Yeah, and they're also basically his backyard, or in the background of his backyard.
I see.
So
but
all
it could
we're
just
really
be because because of what the Barrow Wight is, that's what it takes.
Yeah. But the biggest thing there being discussed is the boundaries of his land. I mean, so it could be the case that as he gets farther from it, he loses power. I think that's reasonable. I don't know how possible it is for him to leave his land or not.
Yeah, because it could be just mystery. Actually impossible for him to physically cross that boundary, because he is tied to that place. Mm-hmm. Because he's the spirit of that forest, and this is the furthest extent of his power. And because of the nature of what he is, whatever that is, wherever he is, he has authority. But if he is not a place where he has authority, then he cannot be there.
Yeah, he's an enigma. And that's like the first word that Tolkien describes in this entire book of his letters. Sorry. That's like the first word that Tolkien uses to describe him, is as an enigma. Mm-hmm. And also and this is perhaps some good insight too, as the spirit of the lost countryside of Berkshire and Oxford. That I think coupled with everything else we've just said is a good way of understanding Bombadil, and to get inside the mind of the author, even if you understand, trying to be in the mind of that author, that he didn't have Bombadil fully figured out. It had been an attempt, which I read you, and it wasn't necessarily his only attempt, but they were attempts. And that was it.